Well, this hasn't really happened before. I'm reviewing a car that I've already reviewed before. Actually, I think it's happened once before, and it was with, ironically, another Opel vehicle. Anyway, this is the new Opel Mokka. If you are rather an OG subscriber, you'll remember that the Opel Mokka was one of the first press cars I ever reviewed on the channel. And it's back again, this time in facelifted form. It was recently facelifted with a few minor but meaningful changes. Now, I don't normally like to do this, mostly because the quality of my old videos is not very good, but this is going to be a shorter video. I'm just going to give you a few little comparison points between the old Mokka and this one, not just with the car in general, but also this specific one because it's a little bit different, and also because my shift is starting in a couple hours and we need to get this show on the road. So let's have a look at the new Opel Mokka. So let's go ahead and briefly cover, in a little flash editing style, what's different about this Mokka. First thing you probably already noticed by now is the paint. This color is new for the 2025 model year of the Mokka. It replaces the old matcha green that was on the press car that I drove originally. This color is called tropical green. And I think it's absolutely fantastic, and anyone who doesn't order the Mokka in this color is making a big mistake. I also said this about the Peugeot 208, and it's Agueda yellow, and yes, point still stands. That's one of the main key new differences with the Mokka for 2025 is the new color scheme. Now let's move on to the other stuff. Front end. The main thing to note here is a slightly revised visor and headlight design. The headlights now mirror the headlights on the new Frontera, the larger 7-seater SUV that sits above the Mokka in the lineup. And although you probably can't see it from here, the car also features the new Opel badge, which is a little bit different to the old one. It's painted black on this model. You can also have it in regular chrome. By the way, I should also mention that this Mokka has a contrasting black roof and various black badging throughout the place. Side profile. The body cladding along the wheels and the bottom half of the car is now gloss black. It was previously matte black to, I'm told, mimic the appearance of the Mokka Electric. I should, of course, mention this is not the Mokka Electric, but it's now sort of a unified thing across the lineup. And you'll also notice, you might remember that the old Mokka that I reviewed had a chrome character line going around the greenhouse area. Now it's black because this car also has the black package. By the way, there's also a new 18-inch alloy wheel design available, though this car doesn't have that. It has 17-inch wheels, and aside from the little center cap in the middle, you could get these on the previous Mokka as well. Most of the Mokkas I see around town, they have these exact wheels. And finally, the back end, which is exactly the same as before, except now it has the new Opel badge. The taillights are similar, but they're almost the same as they were before. The Mokka script across the tailgate is exactly the same, and it has the dual exhaust outlets, which makes it clear what engine is under the hood, but more on that later. So, what do I think of the Mokka's design? Well, not a whole lot has changed in terms of my opinion on the design. I think it's a very nice looking little crossover. I especially love its impossibly short overhangs, which means, in theory, interior room should be maximized as much as possible considering the car's relatively small footprint. But overall, the Mokka is a very characterful small crossover. I like its big flat hood and the sort of perched profile that it has, not perched profile rather, the perched rear end that you see here. And it's all a very interesting, funky design, and that's infinitely important in this segment, as I'm sure you're aware. So now that we've covered the styling, let's move it along to practicality, and I just realized the key. I left the key in the car. Hold on. Okay, practicality. There's that key fob again, except this one is an actual key, because this one doesn't have keyless entry or start. Anyway, thank you, autofocus. Let's walk over and see what we have to deal with. Bam! 350 liters of space, although it looks smaller than it actually is for some reason. I don't know why it looks like that. I'm guessing some focus was put on passenger room and stuff like that, but it's a pretty usable cargo area. You have this parcel shelf here held on by strings, standard stuff. There's a hook and another hook, and the seats split 60-40 if you need the extra room, which by the way is this much. No spare wheel, unfortunately. And once you're done with your cargo area, Standard stuff, really. You just grab your little tug there and boom. How about the back seats then? Haven't gotten into the back seats yet myself, so let's see what's what. Okay, let's see. Hold on, the headrest is not up. There we go. Well, it's a bit tight in here. I am 5'11" and a half, 1.8 meters tall, and the Discord moderator in width, as you know. This seat is in a comfortable driving position for me, and, well, not a whole lot of knee room. Headroom seems to be fine, though, even though the roofline is pretty sloped. I could travel in the back of this car reasonably, but not an extremely long journey, because it's a bit like getting a bad seat on an economy class airline. I would like some extra knee room, but it's not too bad. I suppose this is a really small crossover. You don't really expect it to be a massive thing back here. You have a little bit of storage on the front seat, which always makes me happy. There's a door pocket. There's a scratchy plastic door panel. I complained about this last time, and, well, I'm complaining about it again. Massively tinted rear windows. And I'm not sure if this was a thing on the previous one, but now you have a couple of USB-A ports there in case you need to charge. Or rather, in case if your passengers need to charge if you're the driver. I don't think I needed to explain that, but whatever. The transmission tunnel here is a little bit taller than I was expecting, considering, well, you can't get the Mokka with all-wheel drive, at least not yet. Let's try it. See what happens. Oh, okay. These seats are about the same, for the record. They're adjusted to about the same level. It's mostly doable. I mean, if you want to, trade foot space with the other passengers, you could do this, but it's not too bad. It's a small crossover. This is kind of what you'd expect. And here's the headroom. I'm sitting up straight, and there's a little recessed area here in the headliner and in the roof. So even if you are taller, you shouldn't have that much problems fitting in the back. So what about the front then? As I mentioned, no keyless entry on this one, and sadly also no power folding mirror. So we're just gonna go in the normal way. Even though this is not the top-of-the-line Mokka, it has these wonderful partial leather, well, at least here on the outer edges, these wonderful seats. They're not the AGR-approved seats. I don't know why Opel just they seem to have given up on that whole thing. But these seats are lovely, they're comfy, and they have this fantastic trim on them. Same goes for the front door panel, this little padded leather section here. And, well, the only major news about the interior is the new steering wheel, which is directly off the Grandland, except it's a little bit smaller. And most of the piano black on the center console, actually all of it on the center console, is now gone. So let's go ahead and step inside. And now we are inside the Mokka. So the first thing that greets you in the new Mokka, as I said previously, is the new steering wheel. As I said, the first thing that greets you in the new Mokka is the new steering wheel, which is straight off the Grandland pretty much. It's just a little bit smaller, and it's a lovely thing. Very good quality leather. I like the shape of it. I like the whole aesthetic it has going. It has the white stitching that we also saw on the Grandland, and basically nothing in the way of piano black, which is nice. And again, it integrates the visor design from the front end into the central area here. That's cruise control, that's various things to do with the infotainment system, and in the middle we have the horn, which sounds like this. This particular Mokka has an 8-speed conventional automatic transmission controlled to the same old electronic switch that we've gotten used to by this point. Very simple. Push it all the way down into drive, shut up, halfway up for neutral, all the way up for reverse. Brings up your backup camera and parking sensors, and it has the stitching views together thing from the Astra, which is great. And then you push the P down here for park, and you also have M for manual mode through these very glossy paddle shifters behind the steering wheel. And down here is the electronic parking brake. Infotainment system. I've covered this system multiple times before. I will refer you to some of my other videos if you want a more detailed look at it. But it's the same one. The software is slightly newer for the Mokka specifically. It's basically the same as in the Astra. It has Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. You can change the color of the screen or add widgets to the gauge cluster screen, and it's pretty good. It's responsive, it's easy to use, it's pretty intuitive, and that's a good song. Yes, thank you, cameraman. That's a that's a good song that you see there. Have a listen to it. It's good. I can't play it for obvious reasons. And that's about it for the infotainment system. It's good. Can't tell you if it has issues with Apple CarPlay because I didn't risk anything and just connected directly through cable. And through a cable, it works perfectly fine. One thing that is different is the shortcuts here, because the older Mokka had more shortcut buttons on this part. Now there's just two: the home button, the car settings, and the power/volume control. That's your power locks and your hazards. Have you noticed something yet? Yeah, apparently Opel could easily get rid of the piano black trim in the center console, but not around the pure panel. It's still all coated with piano black plastic, and it attracts dust and fingerprints from, well, just about everywhere, frankly. Please get rid of this. Just, you know, actually, what would be better, since Opel is really into this pure panel thing? I mean, the Mokka was the first model to have it, after all. A big, curved screen like BMW. Here's the central climate vent, which I don't really understand. You can barely feel it in most cases. Look at this, physical AC controls. Not all of them are here, admittedly, but it does have temperature for both sides, and AC, and the fan speed, and the automatic mode. I believe this switchgear is a leftover from Opel's General Motors days, because newer models don't have this stuff. There's the recirc air, and these spots would be taken up by the heated seats, but this car doesn't have those. Down here you have a 12-volt outlet and a USB-C port for the infotainment system. No wireless charger, although you do get the lovely shark. I'm going to send you to the description as well to read why Opel vehicles have sharks in random places. There's the gear selector that I showed you, the drive modes, again, Eco, Sport, and Normal. More on that in the driving section. Parking brake, cup holders, one of them smaller than the other, and a sliding center console. Very interesting, obviously with storage in there. And that's about it for the center stack. Let's move along to what's in front of the driver. This is a slightly more recent version of Opel's digital gauge cluster, which means it has this bar tachometer and fuel gauge that I don't like very much. The old Mokka had proper dials for these bits of information, but sadly not this one. As I said, tachometer is there. Fuel gauge, and obviously the speed and the gear is there. If you change the color of the infotainment screen, it also changes here. And on the models with ambient lighting, it also changes the color of the ambient lighting, I think. To change what's shown on the screen, you press this button at the end of the stock. By the way, the stocks are actually new. They are new to the Mokka. The old Mokka had the GM stocks that the Corsa still has, but this one has the PSA Group stocks from 20 years ago. I complain about this consistently in these cars, and yeah, it's the same ones as in my Citroen C6. Anyway, you press this button here at the end to change what you're looking at. That's your media, that's your coolant temperature, I added that myself, and various other combinations, including your trip data. To cycle between the trip data, you press the button at the end of the wiper stock, and if you hold that down, as I've explained before, you can reset the trip data. There's a headlight leveling switch here, and a blank switch. I'm not exactly sure what that does. As far as interior content, that's really about all there is to say, other than the overhead lighting controls, which are here, standard PSA Group stuff, except the switches are black because the headliner and the surrounding trim is black. The map lights, the dome light for the doors and stuff, and an SOS button. And your sun visors, which contain unilluminated mirrors. How disappointing. And that's about it for the content and the features of the interior, so let's move it along to quality and storage. So the top half of the dash is covered in a pretty nice soft touch material. I complained about the piano black, but this piece is pretty solid and well put together. No squeaks, no rattles. The switches feel nice and tactile, especially these climate switches, love those. The shifter is pretty solid. I mean, I've used this thousands of times before, it's the same one. And everything just has a good German feeling of quality. I know that the Mokka is built in Spain, but still, it's very Germanic and nice. The door panels are, well, the top half of the door panel, I hadn't noticed that before. That's hard plastic. where you rest your elbow. Okay, there's some nice little metallic effect trim here in this padded area. This armrest, thank goodness, is actually padded. I'm gonna pull the door closer so I can actually touch it. There we go. Switches on the door feel fine, the door handle. Everything feels solid and well built. So what about storage? Well, there's a pretty massive door pocket. Actually, could I have the bottle, please? Check it out, I finally got props. Door panel easily fits a relatively large bottle of water, as you can see. There's further storage behind that as well. Disappointingly, nothing here to store your items. There's that little tray that I showed you, the 2 cup holders, the center console, the glove box, which is actually pretty massive. And one last thing I need to mention is that there's a good amount of adjustment in the driving position, but the windshield is a weird upright shape, and you see a lot of that Opel character line on the hood that I've complained about dozens of times before. And overall, the Mokka's interior is a pretty nice place to be. I mean, in comparison to the Grandland, which I drove recently, it's kind of starting to feel its age just a little bit, but it still has good tech, and it's well built, and it's overall pretty nice and spacious as well. So, well done, Opel. And finally, the engine. First thing I need to point out, hydraulic struts on an entry-level model. Well done for that, Stellantis. I'm proud of you. Anyway, this particular Mokka is equipped with the exact same powertrain that the other one that I reviewed previously was also equipped with. That means this is a 1.2-liter turbocharged 3-cylinder engine making 130 horsepower, which goes to the front wheels through an 8-speed automatic transmission. Also available on this car is the same powertrain with 136 horsepower. It's a slightly revised version of this engine. That one comes with a manual transmission, and the 1.2-liter hybrid with 145 horsepower and a dual-clutch automatic transmission. And finally, the Mokka Electric, which has a 155 horsepower front-mounted electric motor and a 54 kilowatt-hour battery pack, which, according to the WLTP cycle, gives that much range. See? As far as performance stats on this particular Mokka go, according to Opel, can you tell I didn't take notes yet? There, those are the stats. And this also reminds me that I am also going to update my opinions on the driving experience that I outlined in my previous video, because 1, they have changed slightly, and 2, I never actually took that Mokka on the highway. I did this one though, so let's check it out. So let's begin as we normally do with town driving, and I think that we can all agree that the Mokka's home turf really is the city. This is where I discovered something rather interesting. Well, obviously the Mokka does very well in town driving. It's quiet, it's relaxed, it's very small and very maneuverable, and the backup camera, the parking sensors, they all help with parking and stuff, but the Mokka is not especially big, so it's very easy to maneuver, and it feels very at home in the city, but there are 2 major things I noticed for the driving experience. For the most part, it's excellent, but 1, this Mokka has the 8-speed torque converter automatic, and having driven the 6-speed dual-clutch automatic several times in other Stellantis vehicles, it seems better suited to the Mokka, because after having driven that, and in general dealing with a lot more DCTs than I do regular torque converter automatics, it's a little bit jerky. Just a tiny little bit in comparison to the dual clutch, so maybe you'll want to look into the Mokka Hybrid for the absolute best gearbox experience while driving in town. The other thing I noticed is the ride, which is unusually harsh for no apparent reason. The Mokka is pretty high off the ground, and this one had 17-inch wheels on really meaty Goodyear tires, but I don't know, it was just a little bit harsh and a little bit crashy at lower speeds. It did get a tiny bit better at higher speeds, but I don't know. It was just a little bit harsh and crashy and not the best. Also, if you want to get the maximum fuel economy with this powertrain, leave the car in eco mode. Because in normal mode, you're not going to get that good fuel economy. In eco mode, I managed to average about 7 liters per 100 kilometers, or this many mpgs. When I was in normal mode, it was closer to 8 or 9 liters. So now let's move it along to the highway, where things were actually pretty good. The Mokka has no trouble picking up speed. The 130 horsepower for a vehicle this small is actually more than enough. And the NVH was solid. There was a little bit of road noise, but again, bad roads. And a tiny bit of wind noise, but nothing crazy. It was actually pretty good on the highway. And the fuel economy on the highway was also perfectly good for what this is. It was around less than 7 liters, around 6.5 or this many mpgs. And finally, for the dynamic driving, well, the Mokka is not trying to sell a false reality to anyone. It's a small crossover that doesn't try to be sporty, and while it does perform rather well, and I love the sound of the engine at high revs because it's a little turbo 3-cylinder, it's good, but it's not what you would call fun. And I realize that a lot of my reviews circulate these same things over and over, but that's just the way that it is with the Mokka as well. But overall, aside from those little niggles, the experience behind the wheel of the Mokka was actually pretty solid, and really that's the good way to describe the whole car. The Opel Mokka is a popular small crossover for a reason, and this facelift definitely brings it more up to date with the rest of Opel's lineup, and it's overall a solid little crossover that does have quite a bit going for it, most notably its charming design. The Opel Mokka gets a score of 8 out of 10. Thank you everyone for watching this video. If you liked it, be sure to hit like and subscribe to the channel. Also follow along with the community tab for updates on upcoming videos and other miscellaneous things, and I will see you guys in the next video. Goodbye.